They called him Ghost, a massive German shepherd who appeared only at night, wandering the ruins of an old fire station. No one knew where he came from. No one dared follow. Until one stormy evening, a 7-year-old boy named Mason stepped into the abandoned building, and the dog didn't run. He stayed, watched, waited. What Mason found beneath the ashes would change everything his family thought they knew about the fire that stole their home, and the brother they thought was gone forever. Welcome to Saved by Tales. Before we begin this unforgettable journey of mystery, courage and love that never faded, tell us in the comments, what would you name a dog who never gave up? And if these stories matter to you, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Because sometimes, the quietest heroes leave the loudest echoes. It had been 3 years since the fire, 3 years since the sirens screamed down Ridgeway Lane, since the night sky had glowed orange, and the world smelled of smoke, melted plastic and fear. Mason didn't remember much from that night. He was only 4 then. His older brother Caleb was 6. Their mom had said something about a candle, a curtain, a draft from an open window. It was all over in minutes. The fire spread faster than anyone expected. The wooden beams caught first, then the carpet, the couch, the staircase. His father got Mason out. Caleb never made it. Or at least that's what everyone said. The firemen never found a body, just fragments, bits of cloth, a melted shoe sole. Enough, they said, to assume the worst. But Mason always wondered why the dog barked that night. He remembered the barking, loud, sharp, urgent. He remembered waking up and seeing something dark through the smoke, something that moved fast and low to the ground, dragging something. His mom had told him it was a dream, that trauma could make your brain lie to you. But 3 years later, Mason still heard that bark in his sleep. The abandoned fire station stood just 2 blocks away from their rebuilt home. It had been closed down months before their house burned, deemed unsafe, its stone walls crumbling from decades of neglect. But after the fire, kids started talking about a dog, a big dog, with silver fur and a torn ear. They said he only came out at night. They called him Ghost. Mason didn't tell anyone, but he saw the dog too. Sometimes when he couldn't sleep, he'd sit by his window and look down the street, and there he would be, silent, still, staring at their house. It was late October when everything began to change. Mason had just turned 7. He didn't want a party. He didn't want balloons or cake. He just wanted to go for a walk. His mom hesitated. He was so quiet these days, so thoughtful for a kid his age. But eventually she gave in. Just the sidewalk, she said, and only till the street lamp. Mason nodded. He had no intention of staying on the sidewalk. He walked toward the fire station. The wind picked up, pulling dead leaves into swirling mini tornadoes. The old building loomed ahead, stone cracked and scorched from time and fire. And there in the middle of the street was the dog, Ghost. He was bigger than Mason remembered, almost wolf-like, his fur a mix of grey and black, like old smoke. Their eyes met. Mason didn't move. Neither did the dog, and then Ghost turned slowly and walked through the collapsed doors of the fire station, as if inviting him in. Mason's heart pounded. He should turn back. His mom would be furious, but something inside pulled him forward. Not fear, not even curiosity, just knowing. He stepped over the threshold. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Ash still coated the floor. Rusted tools hung from scorched walls. And in the corner where the wall had crumbled the most, Ghost stood still. He pawed once at the ground, then looked back at Mason. Mason took a step forward. Another. His sneakers crunched over bits of debris, charred wood, melted plastic, and something that looked like a toy car. Blue, scratched. He froze. That was Caleb's. He picked it up slowly. The edges were warped from heat, but the initials were still visible on the bottom. CJ, Caleb Jackson. Mason looked up. Ghost was gone. The next day Mason didn't tell his mom. He couldn't. She was just starting to smile again, just starting to breathe without crying. But he did go back. Every day after school, he'd leave his backpack by the mailbox and walk to the fire station. And every time Ghost would be waiting, never barking, never growling, just watching, and always near something. A shoe, a pencil case, a notebook burnt at the edges. All of them once Caleb's, all of them hidden in the ash and rubble. On the 7th visit, Mason brought a flashlight. He had to know. He had to see where Ghost was finding these things. The beam of light sliced through the dusty air, casting long shadows on the cracked floor. Ghost stood by a pile of stone in the back corner. He looked at Mason once, then pawed at the rubble again. This time Mason helped. His small hands scraped against rock and dust. He coughed, eyes watering. Then his fingers hit something soft. Fabric. He pulled. It was a jacket, torn, scorched, but still intact enough to see the name tag inside. Caleb J. Mason sat back on his heels, hands shaking, and that's when he saw it, scratched into the stone wall just behind where the jacket had been buried. Letters, shaky, uneven, but clear. I'm here. Ghost let out a soft whine and nudged Mason's arm. He didn't understand it all yet, but he knew now without a doubt. His brother hadn't just vanished, he had been here. And maybe someone had tried to hide that. That night, Mason told his mom everything. He expected her to be angry, but instead her face turned pale. She sat down slowly, staring at the toy car Mason placed in front of her. She picked it up like it might shatter. Tears filled her eyes. Then she whispered, I told the police he might have wandered, that the fire spread too fast, but they said it was too late, that no child could survive that heat. Mason reached into his backpack and pulled out the jacket. She gasped, clutched it like a lifeline, and sobbed, not with grief, with something closer to hope. The next day they went back together. Ghost waited for them, and this time he didn't disappear. He led them deeper into the fire station, past the rubble, past the ash, to a spot beneath a half-collapsed staircase, and there beneath a loose stone slab was a trapdoor, rusty, hidden, but real. Mason looked up at his mom. Her hands trembled, then she nodded, and together they opened it. The creak of the trapdoor echoed like thunder in the hollow firehouse. Mason peered down into the darkness below. His flashlight flickered, revealing narrow wooden steps descending into a hidden space. His mom hesitated. Her hand gripped his shoulder as if she could keep him from falling, not just physically, but emotionally. Because what lay beneath this forgotten floor might finally answer the question that had haunted them for 3 years. Let me go first, she said softly, but Ghost disagreed. The dog bounded ahead of them, tail low but steady, vanishing into the darkness below. His footsteps' sharp clicks on old wood were the only sound. Mason followed, step by cautious step, his mother behind him. Each breath felt too loud. The air smelled of earth and rust and something old, something untouched. And when they reached the bottom, Mason stopped cold. It wasn't just a cellar, it was a room. The walls were lined with shelves, books, binders and dusty gear. The remains of what must have once been a planning room, or safe storage, a bunker, and in the far corner, a mattress, torn blankets, old food wrappers, water bottles. Mason's voice was a whisper. Someone lived here. His mom stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning the makeshift bed, the dent in the pillow, the scribbles on the stone wall nearby. It was a name, Caleb, written over and over again, sometimes neat, sometimes frantic, and next to the name, carved deeper, I'm okay. Her knees buckled. Mason caught her hand. Ghost sat by the mattress and looked up at them, not like a pet, but like a guardian. He was alive, she whispered. Someone kept him alive. But why didn't he come back? Mason asked. His mother turned toward the corner of the room, toward a pile of old rusted chains. Mason followed her gaze. Some of them were broken, some still locked, and nearby, more scorch marks, handprints, on the stone, small, child-sized. Someone didn't let him go, she said, voice tight with grief. They kept him here. Mason couldn't make sense of it. Who would lock up a child? Why? And where was Caleb now? They called the police. Ghost didn't stop them. In fact, he waited until the officer stepped into the firehouse, then padded forward and barked, only once, loud, direct, as if saying, finally. Detective Reese Morgan arrived within the hour, a quiet man with tired eyes, and a small notebook. He listened carefully to Mason. Let him talk. Let him show the toy car, the jacket, the trapdoor. Then Reese crouched in the cellar for a long time, said nothing. Finally, he stood and asked the one question no one else had. Who owned this building when it shut down? Mason's mom blinked. I don't. The city maybe. Or the old fire chief. Reese scribbled something. No, he said. I think someone claimed it. A private transfer. I'll look into it. But Mason noticed something else. When Reese turned away, his jaw clenched. like he knew something, or someone. That night, Ghost didn't follow them home. Instead he lay curled on the firehouse steps, waiting, watching. Mason sat on his bedroom floor, clutching the jacket. He thought about the trapdoor, the chains, the food wrappers. Someone fed Caleb, someone locked him away. And Ghost must have been there, guarding him, helping him. But he was just a dog. He couldn't open locks. He couldn't carry a boy out of a cellar. So what happened? Did Caleb escape? Did the person come back? Too many questions, and the answers Mason feared would hurt more than the wondering ever did. 3 days later, Reese returned. He looked older, more worn. He sat with Mason and his mom, and spoke slowly. "This building," he said, "was bought at auction 5 years ago. The man who bought it, Peter Langston, was a retired firefighter. He had no family, no address listed." Mason's mom frowned. "So what happened to him?" Reese hesitated. "Langston died 2 weeks before the fire." Mason's breath caught. "Then who?" "We don't know," Reese said. "But someone was here after him, someone using the building." He paused again, then added, "There were fingerprints on the chain locks, partial, but enough to run." And his mom asked, "They belong to a man named Garrett Flint." Her face went pale. "That name means something to you?" Reese asked gently. She nodded. "He was the neighbor. Back then, before the fire, he used to watch the boys play in the yard." "Did he ever speak to Caleb?" She swallowed. Too much. It all made sense now. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a cover, a distraction, and in the chaos, Caleb had vanished. But not into flames, into chains. And Ghost must have escaped. Ghost must have waited, watched, and now, led them back. A week later, they found the rest of Caleb's belongings in a nearby storage unit, rented under Flint's alias, including a journal, pages torn, some burned, but enough remained. Mason's mom read them in silence. Then she held the final page out for Mason to see. In shaky handwriting, it read, "I dream of Ghost barking. I hope he remembers where I am. I hope he finds Mason." Mason couldn't stop the tears, because now he understood. Ghost hadn't waited for Mason. He had waited for Caleb's wish, to be found, to be seen, to not be forgotten. The story broke the next week. News channels ran features. Missing boys' belongings found years after fire. Mysterious dog leads family to hidden bunker. But no one found Caleb. Not yet. Flint was still missing. The trail cold, but not to Mason. He knew Ghost was waiting for something more, and that this wasn't the end. Not yet. The winter chill came early that year. Leaves shriveled and dropped like exhausted secrets, covering Ridgeway Lane in rust and amber. The firehouse stood colder now, not from the air, but from memory, from what had been unearthed, from the silence that followed the storm of revelation. No one saw Ghost for 3 days. Mason waited by the steps every afternoon, jacket zipped to his chin, flashlight in his hand. He'd check the trap door, leave water and scraps from dinner, but nothing, not even paw prints. Then on the 4th evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, and the street lamps flickered to life, Mason saw movement by the corner of the station. A shape, low, limping. It was Ghost, but something was wrong. His silver fur was streaked with mud, one side matted with blood, his gait slow and uneven. Mason dropped his backpack and ran. "Ghost," he cried, falling to his knees beside him. The dog whined low, collapsing gently into Mason's lap. His breaths came short, but his eyes, they were still sharp, still urgent, still trying to speak. Mason's mom arrived seconds later. "Oh my God," she gasped, dialing the vet even as she knelt beside them. Ghost licked Mason's hand once, then his head dropped, not in surrender, in trust. He had come back for a reason, and he was done waiting. The emergency vet patched him up. 2 cracked ribs, a gash along his hind leg, no microchip, no owner record. "Whoever this dog is," the vet said, "he's survived a lot, and he came back to you. That means something." It meant everything. Ghost was telling them something without words, and Mason was finally ready to listen. That night, Mason dreamed of Caleb, not the blurry memory Caleb, but a sharper version, older, paler, eyes too wise for a child. He was standing in a field of tall grass. Behind him, tree, a cabin, something hidden. Ghost sat beside him, and Caleb said, "He found me once, he can find me again." Mason woke up breathless. It wasn't just a dream, he was sure of it. Detective Reese agreed to meet them the next day. He brought maps, dozens of them. Flint was last seen heading north, he said, pointing at a stretch of road that twisted through hills and wood. There are miles of hunting land, old cabins, places no one's checked. But how would we know where to start? Mason's mom asked. Ghost gave a low growl, then limped toward the wall where the maps were spread. He paused, and placed one paw, slow, deliberate, on a section marked Thistle Creek, a place none of them had heard of, a place not listed as residential. But something about the dog's posture, the certainty in his stillness, made Reese lean forward. I'll take a team, he said. Tomorrow, first light. But Mason stood up. No, he said. Reese blinked. I'm going, Mason said. He came back for me. He wants me to come. Mason, his mom whispered, torn between fear and faith. Reese looked at the dog, then at the boy, and nodded. All right. They drove out at sunrise. Reese, Mason, his mom, and Ghost, curled in the back seat like a silver shadow. The roads narrowed as they climbed. Cell signal vanished. The trees grew thick and close. Finally Reese pulled into a clearing where an old gravel path split off toward the creek. This is it. They stepped out. No sound but birds and wind. Ghost stood. He sniffed the air, then began to walk. No hesitation, no doubt. The path twisted, turned. Mason stumbled on roots, caught himself on brambles, then through the trees. They saw it. A cabin, small, crooked, windows covered, door chained. Ghost stopped just before the porch, ears flat. Then he barked. Once, twice, loud. Reese raised a hand, signaling the others to stay back. He stepped forward, hand on his holster. The cabin door creaked, and a man stepped out, gaunt, hair white, eyes wide with panic. Garrett Flint. Reese moved fast. Hands where I can see. Flint didn't run. He didn't speak. He just stared past Reese at Mason, and whispered, "You look just like him." That was enough. Reese tackled him to the ground, cuffed him, read him his rights. But Mason didn't care, because behind Flint, the door creaked again, and a shadow stepped out, thin, pale, eyes blinking against the light, and Mason stopped breathing. Caleb. His brother didn't speak. He looked different, taller, but frail, like a picture left in the sun too long. But Mason knew, even before Ghost rushed forward, tail wagging wildly, whining with joy. It was him. It was Caleb, and he was alive. His mother sobbed, fell to her knees. Reese called for backup. Flint was taken. Paramedics arrived. But Mason didn't move. He just hugged his brother, tight, afraid to let go, afraid it might not be real. But Caleb whispered, "You found me." And Mason whispered back, "He did." They both looked at Ghost, the hero with no badge, the guardian with no voice, the dog who never gave up. The hospital room was too white, too quiet, too clean for what Caleb had endured. He sat propped against pillows, ivy in one arm, a faded blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Mason sat across from him, legs swinging off the chair, hands nervously fiddling with the fabric of his hoodie. Ghost lay curled on the floor between, one ear up, always listening. Caleb hadn't said much in 2 days. Doctors called it selective mutism, a response to trauma. But Mason didn't. He understood. His brother was still catching up to the world, still learning how to breathe in a life that had moved on without him, still learning how to feel safe again. And Mason, he was learning how to walk just like Ghost had. Their mom barely left Caleb's side. She brushed his hair gently, hummed songs they used to sing in the car, brought his favorite old toys from the attic. But when she wasn't in the room, Mason noticed Caleb's eyes drift, to the window, to the tree, to the sky, and always, always to Ghost, as if the dog held all the answers, as if the dog had never stopped speaking. Only now, someone was finally listening. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in orange and navy, Mason sat on the hospital balcony with Ghost curled at his feet. The air was cool, the wind soft, and then the door creaked. Caleb stepped out, wrapped in his blanket, barefoot, silent, but standing. Mason looked up. They locked eyes. No words, just silence stretching between. And then, Caleb sat beside him. Ghost shifted slightly, but stayed pressed between them, warm and steady. "I thought you forgot me," Caleb whispered. Mason blinked. The voice was quiet, cracked, but real. "I didn't," Mason said. "I never did." Caleb stared straight ahead. "The fire scared me. Everything was loud. Then dark. Then he came. Flint." Caleb nodded, said he'd keep me safe. But he lied. He locked the door,
said no one would come. He swallowed, except Ghost. Mason listened, fighting back the ache in his chest. He stayed with me, Caleb whispered. Every night, when it got cold, when I cried, he found food. He kept me alive. Ghost didn't move. He just rested his chin across both boys' feet, like a bridge between two halves of one broken world. I heard the fire trucks once, Caleb said, but I was too scared to shout. You're here now, Mason said. You found me. Mason shook his head. He did. They both looked at Ghost.
And for the first time since the rescue, Caleb smiled. The trial came quickly. Garrett Flint pled not guilty, said he rescued the boy from a dangerous home, said he gave him shelter, protection, love. The courtroom recoiled. Mason's mother testified, voice shaking but fierce. Reese brought the storage unit evidence, the forged documents, the journal entries, and Ghost. He wasn't allowed inside the courthouse. But on the day of the final hearing, a video was played, grainy footage from the vet clinic, showing the dog limping in, bloodied, still determined. The jury didn't take long. Guilty, multiple counts, years of prison, but it didn't feel like enough. Not to Mason, not to Caleb, not after everything lost. They moved soon after, not far, just a different house, a new start, somewhere with light, with trees, with silence that didn't feel haunted. And Ghost came with them. He had no collar, no papers, but the moment Caleb whispered, "Come home," the matter was settled. He was theirs, forever. Healing wasn't fast or easy. Some nights Caleb still screamed in his sleep. Sometimes he flinched when doors slammed or thunder rolled in. But Mason was always there. So was Ghost. And slowly Caleb began to laugh again. Sing, ask questions, run, live. And every time he looked at Ghost, there was something unspoken in his eyes. Gratitude too deep for words, love too big for language. One spring morning, they took Ghost to the lake. A real trip. No hospitals, no police, just a picnic, a ball, and the water. Caleb ran through the shallows, Ghost chasing after him, barking joyfully, tail whipping in wide circles. Mason watched from the shore. He turned to his mom, who sat beside him, sunglasses shading teary eyes. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then whispered, "I'm proud of you, of both of you." He smiled, then watched as Caleb fell into the sand, laughing as Ghost buried him in paw prints and water droplets. For the first time in 3 years, Mason believed the worst was behind them. They were home, whole, together. Because sometimes heroes wear badges, sometimes they hold guns, or flashlights, or gavels, but sometimes they walk on 4 legs and never give up.